All right, guys, welcome back. We're going to be recording with our good friend Joanne, who is a very experienced Amazon seller. We have a couple of questions we're going to ask him today. Before we get into that, though, you want to give us a little background about your story selling on Amazon?
Yeah, so I actually started selling on Amazon in high school. I think it was my sophomore year of high school. Um, my dad, growing up, he owned a mortgage company, and that ended up getting taken by the government. That's a long story. And so he had to figure out what to do. So he actually started selling on like eBay and Amazon, kind of like as it was up and coming about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And so as he was getting into it, like he was starting to like being able to like rent his own office and stuff. And so I would always go in and like see what they were doing and how things would work. And eventually he was like, well, do you want to start your own? You know? And so uh, I started out just kind of learning the basics, how to find products, how everything kind of works. Because I knew nothing at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So really started out with basic stuff, and I would make very small orders from China through Alibaba.com. That's the main source that I use. So like my very first product I ordered was like this garlic crusher.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a cheap little $12 thing.
Uh-huh.
But it actually started to sell, I'd be in school and it was the coolest thing to be like, hey, I made like $80 today while I was just sitting in class.
Mm-hmm.
It was a cool thing, and I really wish I would have stuck with it at that point, because there was at a point where like I thought, I was like, like right now it's not generating a lot of money, and it was like I just wanted cash because I was a kid, so I was like, I'm gonna go get a real job.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped at that point and then picked it up again a few years later, but that's when I really started to learn about it.
Okay.
But I didn't get really serious about it till like 2 years ago.
Okay.
That's
And
when I
now,
really get into it.
now, when you did start to take it serious, you still repeated the same process, trying to source it through Alibaba, bring it, get an inventory here, and then relisting it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, how do you mentioned before the first thing was like the garlic crusher. When you started to get back into it, what were the newer products you started to focus on?
So when I first started again about a year and a half ago, the first things I got into were like higher priced baby items. So see, the very first product I started was it's this EMF baby blanket
Okay.
for like pregnant women. So they like lay it over their belly, and it's supposed to help like reduce EMF radiation to the baby. And that was a $65 item. And those actually sell really well now. We sell like 5 or 6 of those a day. So those have actually picked up. A few other items were, let's see, a lot of them I don't sell anymore. A lot of those first ones I started actually failed because I was getting back into a thing of just trying to get products up as fast as I could.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really like paying attention to the market or the numbers. And so a lot of those beginner products actually failed, and only a few of them really stuck through. So getting started back up again, I made a lot of those beginner mistakes. And then
When you said they began to fail, was it that they just weren't selling, or you just weren't making money off of them?
some of them I wasn't making money off of, and then some of them I started them, and in the beginning they were successful. And then as I was growing, the market was super oversaturating. And so the competition just got too high, prices started to get tanked, and then it became a bad product. So there was a few times where I tried to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and just kept losing money off it. So I finally just kind of let go of it.
Now, do you mean that other sellers also created their own listings of a similar product, or sellers were kind of jumping in front of you? Like if you were at $69, they were going 68 and then 67.
Yeah, so they were creating their own products. So what I do, the only kind of products I like to sell myself are private label, because I don't like to compete under the same listing for a product. So if I private label a product, That means I bring it in, I create the listing, it's my product. No one else can sell on that listing unless they get the product from me and it is like their authorized seller under the listing. Because I don't want to compete with other people on my own listing. So I want to be able to sell for the price I want. So what was going on was, for example, the main one I'm talking about is this cotton rope basket. So I started off, I got like 200 of them, and they were selling really well. I think we're doing like 6 or 7 a day at the beginning. And then I went in to place a bigger order. And these things took a while to manufacture. So like the manufacturing time on them was like 60 days. And then they were large and heavy, so they were shipped by sea freight. So that was another 45 days to get to Amazon. And in that time, from my beginner order to that order, the market had saturated with hundreds of other sellers. Mm-hmm. And so a product that was selling for $35 all of a sudden was down to like $24, $25. So, I mean, your margins were like nothing, and the ads would just chew up spend, and it was a mess.
Yeah, so I've noticed that with like certain products, especially like FBA versus non-FBA, there's almost like certain products you almost can't do FBA when it's like under $20 because there's just so much cost that kind of go into play just to get it there that it's almost sometimes not even worth it. Was that something you noticed?
Yeah, so so most of my products, I only like to FBA products just because FBM can end up taking a lot of time and actually accrue more cost through shipping, depending where it's going and how much it costs. So usually whenever I source products, I look for products that I can put in FBA, and I just add that into my cost because I know on average Amazon's going to take about 15% just a referral fee. And then usually their FBA shipping fee is another 15-ish%. So I know they're taking 30%. And so I can calculate my COGS and all my other percentages based off that and calculate how much I can make to make sure it's going to be a profitable product in FBA.
So say you're selling something for like $100. Amazon's going to take about 30 from their end if it's FBA. So you're left with at least 70. So what's your ideal cost if you're going to get back, say, $70 in the $100 sale?
Well, so for me, it kind of depends. So if you're selling a higher priced item, like at $100, usually you can get away with your cost selling for about 2.5 times what you paid for it.
Okay.
So I mean, would that be like $40 or something? You could sell it for 100 pretty easily. But I mean, as you start getting into like the cheaper items, say you buy some for like, you're selling a product that's $25, you need to be getting that product for like a third of the cost, solely because, with a $100 item, say you've got 30% profit margin, so you want to put like 10% of that towards ads to try and, retain like a 20% profit margin. Well, that 10% on a $100 item is going to be $10 on ad spend, which is pretty good. But if you got that same margins on a smaller item that's only $25, I mean that 10% is only going to be like $2.50. So it kind of depends. If you're selling a cheaper item, I like to be able to sell it for at least 3 times what I'm paying for it. If I'm selling more expensive item, usually you can get away between 2.5 times, just because percentage-wise it's smaller, but dollar amount, I mean it's more, so you have more to do what you want.
Okay. Now you spoke about before on like some of the products that like failed because there was too many, competitors that kind of came in the marketplace. Recently, have you seen any other, like you made that shift towards making private label? Has that been like your primary focus where everything going forward is just always private label?
Yeah, so I've never done retail arbitrage or third-party selling solely because, when I build a business, I'm in it for the long term. I want to build the brand and eventually want to sell that business. I mean, if you're selling third party, it takes away from the value when you sell because, you're not selling your own brand, you're selling a business that's selling other brands that's making money. But if you can go in and sell like your own brand, you have intellectual property and all that, it brings overall value worth higher. So to me, that's a better long-term play. is to private label. And Amazon recently is actually taking a lot of measures to get rid of retail arbitrage and stuff like that. They want to really ensure that when people buy a product on Amazon, it's an authentic product. So they're launching this thing. It's called a Protocol Zero, I believe. And what it is just a full transparency program. So if, say, a manufacturer signs up for it, say, Huggies, they sign up for it, and they start shipping in their product. If they sign up for the transparency program, they have to put a special transparency label on the product, and every single label is unique. So it's not like a UPC code, you just slap the same on everywhere. It's an individual product code, and it has like a QR scan. So every one costs about 5 cents through Amazon. And so if you send in product that is listed under the transparency program and you don't have the codes, they'll just hold the product, say, hey, you don't have the transparency codes, we're not going to set this item live, and they'll send it back to you. And then they'll just charge you for that because, they can't have it there. And then it's the same thing with FBM. You have to, if you list, say, 20 units, they're going to make you send them the 20 codes that you have. And so that takes out retail arbitrage, because there's people who say they'll list Huggies wipes on Amazon for $25, $35, and then they'll just go on to like Walmart.com and send it straight to that address. So private label in my is moving forward with all these new programs Amazon's putting into action is really going to be like the only way to sell. Either that or like an authentic third party, but private label is better than that.
Okay.
So
now, when you talk about the private label, what do you need to create your listing? Like, what are the main things for someone to start their own listing, their own private label listing?
So usually what I do, so I've created about 2 brands in the past few months. One of them is a Amber product brand. So the first thing we did was buy a web domain just so we can have an email associated with that brand. And that's like the main thing we usually need to get. And so when I go in, you just need a UPC code, the brand name, whatever you come up with. And then usually it's good to have a domain name associated with it. So that way, if people are emailing you about your product or anything, it's going to, the brand's email. But all you need is UPC codes and your brand name and then product to sell.
Now, where do you get your UPC codes from? What website?
So the UPC codes I use, I get from this place called speedybarcodes.com. Reason being is they are GS1 certified and they're much cheaper than going through the GS1 website. So what this place did was years and years and years ago, they bought, millions of these barcodes from GS1 when they were much, much cheaper. And so they're all GS1 authenticated and actually unique. You're not just buying like random stuff that could have a duplicate somewhere. And it's also at a fraction of the price and it's much easier to get. And so, if you want just to like have that extra security of mind, you can always go through and get them through the GS1 website just to like, so in your head that it is completely secure. But for something like this that sells on Amazon, knowing that they're already GS1 certified, that's where I get them from, just because they're much cheaper.
Now, I've talked with a few other sellers, and they always, especially with newer sellers, they bring up like a trademark. Do you try to trademark any of this stuff when you create a listing, or is it just get the UPC code and take it from there?
So usually when I start off, we'll just start the listing and see how it does, how the brand does. Then as it grows, that's when we start getting into the trademark process, because that's when we want to start doing more. So there's a lot of features that become unlocked once you have a registered trademark and you enter that into Amazon. So like the first one being like enhanced brand content. So if you're ever looking at a product and you go down to like the product description, and they've got all like those really nice pictures and text, all that is enhanced brand content, and you can't have that unless you have a registered trademark. Another thing being is sponsored brands ads. So whenever like you search a product and across the very top, you see like the brand name and the logo and then like three of their products. So that's a sponsored brands ad.
Mhm.
Um, and those are very effective and they work very well. So that's another thing that becomes unlocked, as well as you can target individual ASINs.
Okay.
Um, if people don't know what an ASIN is, it's just a unique code that Amazon applies to any product you list. So say, you got this competitor, they're kind of eating up at some of your sales, and so you want to target an ad to their listing. You can actually send up an ASIN targeted ad. And so as they're looking at their listing, like right below the buy box, they'll see an ad for your product. And so the goal is to just kind of get them away from their product back to your page and get the sale. There's a few other things you can do too, like building out stores and stuff that don't have as much effect, but those are the kind of the main things that getting the trademark done has, as well as just kind of protecting your brand.
So you're saying maybe in the beginning, if a newer seller is creating their own private label product, maybe start with just the UPC codes, and then if it is successful, then down the line try to get it like trademarked.
Yeah, so that's what I do. Like this was with this one brand I have, it's called Meraki Amber. I mean, when it started, it was just doing a few $100, wasn't profitable at the beginning, but now it's doing about $1,000 a day, and so now we're starting to get into the trademark process.
Okay, it's a good point of reference to look back on.
Yeah.
Now you also mentioned like you have certain steps that you take on when you're trying to launch like a successful product. Can you go into some of the things that you do when you're launching a new product?
Yeah. So, I mean, the main thing overall is kind of like your listing, how you build it. So you want to make sure that you have a good product. So, I mean, getting samples from a few different suppliers, all at the correct price that you need. So you want to get the best product you can get, the price, the best packaging, and everything. And the next step is kind of building your listing, going through and doing your keyword research and make sure you're saturating your listing with all the best keywords that are getting searched the most. So, I mean, when you list a product, Amazon doesn't know what your product is. It just scans an algorithm through it. And so it takes all the words that you have in your product, and that's how it knows where to place it. And so, if you're selling, say, resistance bands, and you only have the word resistance bands in there like once, it's going to kind of put it low on the keyword when someone searches resistance bands because it doesn't think it's very relevant.
Okay.
So like if you are selling resistance bands, you're going to want to put it in there as many times as you can, in the title, in the bullet points, in the description, just all over the place as many times as you can. Um, Title is always the best. It has the most impact, and then bullet points, and then your product description. Um, Images are important. They don't do anything to like boost your listing in the algorithm, but I mean, it's what people look at when they're thinking to buy your product. So having good professional quality images that are easy to look at, easy to understand, like what your product is and what it does is very important.
Okay.
Um, and then how I've actually launched my products has changed over the years. So in the beginning, when I would launch a product, we would send out as many as we can to just boost reviews and the listing itself. But now all I do is I'll just put it out there, run some ads, get a friend or two to buy it, to leave a review, and then just kind of let it grow like that. And I've noticed, I mean, I get the same result for a much less cost.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you kind of just have to like learn it as you go, seeing what works and what doesn't. And it's going to be different for every product. So, I mean, I've had some products that have taken months to pick up and kind of like really start to go. And I had a product that I listed, I mean, 3 days ago, and right off the bat, it did $600 in a day. And it's a $20 item.
Yeah. So you're moving up quite a few.
Yeah,
Now,
so it just kind of depends.
now you mentioned we were talking before about like manually fulfilling, like you or I going to UPS or USPS and shipping it versus the FBA where you ship it to Amazon and then when someone buys it, Amazon ships it. What are the main differences or benefits between the two?
Um, So the main differences between FBA and FBM is usually the Prime badge. So I mean, when people go to Amazon, most of the people who buy on Amazon are Amazon Prime subscriptions. And so they like having the, 24 to 48 hour delivery through Prime where they know they can order it and it's going to be there the next day or, in 48 hours. And so usually with FBM, you don't have that. There are a few exceptions. Larger accounts, usually 7, 8 figure accounts, can have the ability to do seller fulfilled Prime, which I've actually done before, and it's quite a hassle. It's hard because you have to make sure some packages get there before 12 a.m. and then the rest by 12 p.m. then the rest by 5 p.m. So you're going to the post office twice a day, every single day. So it's a lot of effort. And usually when it's in FBA, your overall cost is lower. It kind of depends, actually. So some products, your FBA shipping cost will be about the same. Some products will be more expensive. Some products might be less expensive. But the main benefit of selling FBA versus FBM is that typically, if you're selling FBA, for every one sale on FBM, you're going to get 2 to 3 sales on FBA just by having the Prime badge. And Amazon gives a boost to FBA listings because they get more of a cutback from it. They don't say they do, but they really do give it a little natural boost. And then people like having the Prime badge because it's free shipping. And then it gets there in the 24 to 48 hour period.
Yeah. I've even seen listings where the Prime or add to cart in the corner, the top right, which everyone always sees first. Say the item was, the Prime was $100. And then if there was other sellers that were non-Prime, they would be $80, where the Prime was, you were the first one to purchase, but it was $20 more expensive. But it was just
and that's another good point. If there are more than one seller on the page, if it's a third-party seller or just other people selling it, Prime gets priority to buy box. Just because they do, because it's faster shipping usually, and so it's going to get that buy box. So if you've got 2 people at Prime selling it at $100, they're going to have buy box priority over, say, 3 people selling it for $90 or $85, just because they're Prime.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to some of the beginner sellers, what are some mistakes that a new seller is going to want to avoid?
Main thing is realizing other costs that will accrue rather than just your buy price and your sell price.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people that think, well, I can buy this item for $10, I can sell it for $25, not realizing that Amazon is going to take 15%, and then you got to pay your shipping costs, and then you got advertising costs. There's going to be all these other little costs along the way, and before they know it, they're losing money by selling this product on Amazon. So I've heard it countless and countless times of people saying how Amazon's a scam, don't sell on Amazon, simply because they don't know how to run their percentages and what cost they need to get their product at to be able to sell it profitably. So the main thing is, your cost of your product versus how much you're going to sell it for. Another thing is how you build your listing. Keyword research is very important. A lot of Amazon sellers I've worked with, helping out with their accounts, doing consulting. Most people don't understand keyword research unless they've actually been with a mentor who's been selling on Amazon for a long time. That's a huge thing. And then just how Amazon works, being able to understand how to fix problems. So if you ever run into problems with Amazon, understanding how to be able to communicate with them, going through customer service, how to get to an actual representative rather than just their call centers that they have that just kind of skim through the crap. But main thing being cost of product, building your listings. Those are the big things.
So when you talk about talking to someone that actually works at Amazon versus going through customer service, how do you navigate through that to get to someone who's actually human and not the automated response that
Yeah, well, so the first people to talk to are usually just like virtual assistants that are going to be, not in the US. You can tell because, the second they pick up, they're really hard to understand, stuff like that.
Okay.
And they don't actually have the power to do very much to help you. Um, so say you need something, you need help with like, say you have a registered trademark and you need to talk with brand support. You can actually go in and call them and say, usually don't like to push you through just because that's just how they are. But if you sit there and bug about them enough and say, I need to talk to a specialist, whatever case you open, they will know where to direct you to a specialist. But a lot of people don't know that you can actually talk to a specialist. They think the front line is kind of the only place to talk to. But usually once you actually talk to a specialist, it's a person in the US, and 9 times out of 10, the second I talk to a specialist, the problem's resolved in like 30 seconds.
Okay. So if there is a problem, open up a case, call, ask to speak to a specialist, and then.
Yeah, so the first person, they'll try and walk you through a couple like bullcrap steps. But if you're an experienced seller and you know what you've been doing, you know that you've already tried 100% of the stuff they're going to have you try to do. So usually the second they answer, I usually just trying to get them to push me through to a specialist that can actually resolve an issue.
And the other thing you mentioned before was about the keyword. Is there a particular site that you use or a beginner can use to?
So there's a few sites you can use. So the ones I use, one of them I use is called merchantwords.com. Another site I use is called Helium 10. Helium 10 is a little bit more expensive, but they also have about 10 different kinds of tools that help you with like product research, keyword, reverse ASIN lookups, building listings, stuff like that. I know a lot of people use Viral Launch. I personally never used it. I've always used these other tools. But there's a lot of different tools out there that kind of accomplish the same task.
Okay. I think we wrapped up a lot of these questions. Was there maybe a last point that you wanted to give maybe to a new seller to help, maybe some advice you wish you would have gotten in the beginning?
You starting out, a lot of people ask, how much money do I need to start out? I would say you would at least need $5,000 to $10,000. Closer to 10, but 5 would do it. And don't expect it to take off running. And if you are starting out with less money, don't try and go wide too fast. So a mistake I personally made before has been, thinking, wow, I've got $8,000. I want to launch these 4 products. And then as those products sell, you've got to do reorders on all of them, but you've got to do larger reorders. And the cash from those sales isn't going to cover those reorders. And so you've got to start investing more and more money. And before you know it, you're stretched thin on cash and you're running out because you're trying to grow 4 products at once, but you don't have very much cash flow to support that. So starting out, if you have less money, start with 1 product, maybe 2, work on growing that, focus on it. And then once you have more cash available, then start to widen. But don't try and grow too fast because it'll just kill you.
Nice. I like that. All right, buddy. Really appreciate the time out of your day, and hopefully we'll get back into one of these videos again soon. We'll have some more questions, and good luck with all the selling on Amazon.
Yeah, thanks for giving me a call.
All right,
Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.